Well, it is the middle of August. The NFL preseason is well underway, and the new version of Madden is available in stores. This is Madden 19, the Hall of Fame edition for the Xbox One. There's also a PlayStation 4 version of both the Hall of Fame and regular versions as well. The game looks great, sounds pretty good, and most importantly, it plays pretty well. But why am I showing you a new copy of Madden 19 on Unsealed? Well, I'm setting the stage for what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. I'm going to be addressing one of probably the most bitter sports video game rivalries in history. I'm not talking about Mario and Sonic, that's not the sports game, but I am talking about John Madden Football versus NFL 2K. A rivalry that if you played one of those two games back in that period of time, you usually sat on one side of the fence or the other. You weren't right over the fence like I was, where you liked both games for a variety of reasons. I bought both games every year because I like football, I like sports video games. On one side, I've always been a Madden fan, dating all the way back to the Super Nintendo back in 1991. As bad as that game was, I still was a fan. On the opposite side of the fence, we had the NFL 2K series, an upstart series that came out for the Sega Dreamcast after EA said no, they weren't bringing Madden over there. So Sega picked up Visual Concepts, and they delivered what was a mind-blowing experience in September of 1999. A football game that moved at 60 frames per second, that had player faces that would animate, that had two legitimate commentators that even though they weren't real commentators, they were voice actors, they delivered their lines so well that you didn't know the difference. There were little pieces of presentation that let you think that you were watching a game on TV, such as replay angles that were just super cool to look at. Oh, and by the way, you could play the game online too if you had SegaNet and you had your console hooked up either via dial-up or via cable modem if you could do that back then. So you had your two competitors, but they weren't on the same plane just yet because the 2K games were just Dreamcast only, but that wouldn't last. And in 2001, after the death of the Dreamcast, Sega published its 2K games on the PlayStation 2 as well as other consoles. The first of these being NFL 2K2, a game that I don't have to open for you today, unfortunately, but it's a port of the Dreamcast game and not an altogether new game. The game is decent. The game doesn't do anything different in terms of presentation than the Dreamcast games did. It performs about the same in terms of that kind of grade. Still plays very well, still easy to pick up and play. Probably skews a little bit more towards the arcade side of things, which is right up my alley, of course. Madden is a bit more simulation aspected, and that's okay too. That's really the big difference between the two games, at least in my mind. Whereas Madden 2002 still had Madden and Summerall in the booth. The game certainly looked good, 60 frames per second, had a decent amount of features, and it was good for a Madden game. So the battle really hadn't begun just yet because people were still getting used to having these two powerhouse series on the same console. It wasn't until 2002, which is the sports year 2003, that the battle really began, and that is where this episode of Unsealed is headed. Today we're going to be opening up two copies of games. One game is going to be Madden 2003, which is this guy right here with Marshall Faulk on the cover from the St. Louis Rams. And we'll also be opening NFL 2K3 with Brian Urlacher, who also just hit the Hall of Fame recently on the cover of that game. So we're going to be breaking down both. We're going to open up both copies and talk a little bit about each one in this episode. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be going through the next two sports years, the final 2 years of the NFL 2K franchise, unfortunately. But let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about Madden 2003. Madden 2003, on the back here, it says the best gets better. And we have a feature set here that's a pretty long list. Take your game online, so that was a pretty big deal. The network adapter was just coming out for the PlayStation 2, so now you're able to play games online just like you could on the Dreamcast. Football's best commentary. So Pat Summerall was retiring. He was moving on. In comes Al Michaels, who has some video game commentary experience in the Hardball series, as well as the Brett Hull hockey series. So he does have some video game chops to him. Unfortunately, the commentary never really rose above where we thought it would be for Al in this case, but more on that another time. New minicamp mode, so you could tour NFL cities in the Madden Cruiser and compete in minigames for unique Madden cards. Madden cards were kind of like My Team cards today, except you didn't play those players. You got special power-ups for players or teams on the field. You can create your own playbook, which was pretty neat. A deep franchise mode with 30 years of career stats. You could play a 30-year franchise mode if you had that kind of free time. You could draft players, export your franchise team to all game modes. That was pretty neat. And the EA Sports Tracks, which gets a ton of flack. People don't like the EA Sports Tracks music selection. I'm one of the few people that does. And if you look at the selection of artists here, you have Andrew WK. I believe Party Hard is the song on here. Nappy Roots featuring Marcos from POD, Head PE, Kurashi, Good Charlotte, Bon Jovi, and many more. So it is a very diverse soundtrack list, and that was something that would be in common with Madden games for the rest of the PlayStation 2 era. And again, the screenshots, although they're tough to see because of my laptop, I'll try and hold this at a little bit of an angle, certainly look pretty good. The player models, especially in the faces, look pretty generic, and the font on the back of the jerseys was always the same, but nevertheless, the game looked and animated pretty well. So we'll go ahead and we will open this up, or at least we will try and open this up, and we will break down a bit more of this Madden phenomenon here. I owned this game. I bought it right when it came out because I bought every Madden game right when it came out. Unfortunately, this particular copy of the game looks like it's been resealed and is not an originally sealed game. We don't have the security label at the top, which is pretty much a dead giveaway that this has just been a resealed copy. Sorry about that microphone. There we go. So when we open this up, and yeah, the case is cheap. On the inside, we have the Madden manual. We have the disc there. Whoops, I'll turn it the right way. There we go, with Marshall Faulk on the cover. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the manual real quick. Yeah, you can smell the inside, and you can tell that it's been resurfaced. That's too bad. But I didn't pay very much for this, so that's fine. The manual is not in color. It is in black and white. We'll hold it like this. You can kind of see it. What's interesting here, if we take a look at the contents, there's a 2-minute drill here. It talks all about the franchises, including a fantasy draft, which is pretty cool. Fantasy football was big even back then. Madden cars, there's a whole section on that. The game just, it was fine. I wasn't the biggest fan of Al Michaels' commentary. He did get better in successive years, but I thought that his commentary delivery was a little flat, whereas John Madden was always the same character he always was, and more of John Madden, at least in my opinion, was never a bad thing. Of course, he's nowhere to be found in his games anymore, but back then he was definitely a common player doing color commentary for every game. On the back, by the way, there is an ad for NBA Live 2003. I think that's Jason Kidd back there doing his thing, getting ready to drive the lane. So that's a look at Madden 2003, a very brief look at the game. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not an original version. It looks like it's been repackaged and resealed, but nevertheless, I have this, and I'm probably going to wind up giving this away at Retro World Expo in September. Now, let's talk about NFL 2K3 with Brian Urlacher there on the cover. The emergence of a powerhouse, it says, as we take a look at the screenshots, and there is a smaller list of features. I do want to point out one thing real quick, though. If you look down in the bottom next to the E symbol, you see something that says powered by ESPN down there. This was the first of the 2K games to have the ESPN branding in it, and boy, did Visual Concepts hit it out of the park with this. Let's go ahead first and talk about the features. ESPN broadcast presentation featuring player introductions, split-screen cameras, weekly wrap-ups, game highlights, season-end awards, and more presented in authentic ESPN style. This was something that Visual Concepts just expanded on in later years, and we will get to those in later episodes of Unsealed. So make sure you come back in the next couple of weeks to check those out. Advanced gameplay with hot routes, hot defenses, on-the-fly audibles and blitz pickups, new cut blocks, special moves, and more. The new franchise mode has cap space that they're talking about, outbidding division rivals for free agents, spotting talent at the NFL Combine, managing week-to-week operations in a new 3D menu system that looked a lot like a general manager's office. And, of course, there was online play here as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this guy open. This will be easier to open. And you can see at the top here, there we go, that this does have the security seal on it. So we do know that this is a legitimately new copy. So we'll get this open. There we go. And we will take the seal off. And I will remember this time, I got to make sure that I open this kind of flat so that if the disc got displaced during shipping, that it doesn't fall out on me. So we will take the seal off. There we go. Oh, nice. So when we open this up, again, we get the Sega product registration in there. And it's the same one that I've read in past episodes, so I'm not going to waste your time reading that again. And on the inside, just like Madden 2003, we have the manual and the disc looking pretty much identical. Madden and manual sound the same. The manual is thick. The manual is 50-plus pages long, and unlike future copies of 2K, this is pretty thorough, and it's in color, by the way, which is pretty cool. Talking about the different game modes, such as franchise, off-season tasks, free agent wire, talking about the coach's desk, the NFL Combine. Now, this would only get better in later years, and again, in episodes over the next week or two, we'll be going over ESPN NFL Football and NFL 2K5 and checking out even more features that were added. But here, it's pretty thorough. Franchise, season, playoffs, tournament, practice situation, and online. Having situations where you can make up your own, I gotta reach this yard line, or I have to beat this score in this amount of time, is certainly exciting and a way to play the game without having to play a full version of the game, which I think is pretty cool. Allen Iverson is on the back there with NBA 2K3, and again, we started to see the ESPN presentation carrying over. NBA 2K3, NHL 2K3, NCAA College Basketball 2K3, and NCAA College Football 2K3, which I'd like to get at some point and open those up on the PS2, and hopefully I'll be able to do that in later episodes. So, that is NFL 2K3. I think it's also worth noting, if I remember right, and I may not, yes, much like the NHL 2K3 that I had opened in a past episode, the Sega Sports Challenge is here as well, where you could go on to segasports.com and register your play results and see how it compared with other players around the country or around the world. I always thought that that was a pretty neat thing. We don't do that anymore because our consoles are always connected, so you don't need to log on to a website and check to see where you are. You simply just turn your console on and check it out. But still, that was a pretty neat concept for the time period, especially because not everybody was online just yet. You had to buy the network adapter separately, at least until you got the slimline PS2s, which would come out a short time later. So because not everybody was online, this gave at least the illusion of some kind of online connectivity to check and see how you would rank against other players. And I always thought that that was pretty neat. So NFL 2K3, Madden 2003. In my opinion, the games as they were in every year are very close together. I do like some of the presentation changes that Madden 2003 put together. Having the minicamp mode, I think, certainly added something. And Madden cards gave you something a little bit extra to shoot for, gave you that collectability aspect, which NFL 2K3 just didn't have at that point. But you would see, or you will see in later years, that that visual concepts would make up for that in a pretty big way. But I don't want to spoil it because we have 2 more episodes to go as we cover the 2004 and 2005 sports years with an extra special surprise for the 2005 sports year. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you very, very soon. If you've played NFL 2K3 or Madden 2003 before, or if you have any opinions on the 2K versus Madden battle, please talk about it in the comments below. Let me know what your memories are or what your opinions are. I'd love to hear from you. Are you in the center like me, or are you Team Madden or Team 2K? I'd love to hear from you to find out. Until the next episode, my friends, thank you very much for watching. See you later.